Prince William is seen with other world leaders at the Pope's funeral.
And the internet's favorite punchline, Meghan Markle, goes viral again for her flour sprinkles on eggs. Rupert, why?
Good question. Good question. All to be revealed over the next 40 minutes or so.
Welcome to Heirs and Spares, the show that dives into the fascinating world of two of the most recognized royal couples on both sides of the Atlantic. I'm Kinsey Schofield, and I'll be bringing you updates on Prince Harry and Meghan Markle right here in California.
And I'm Rupert Bell, and I'll be bringing you updates on what's going on in the world of the Prince and Princess of Wales here in the UK.
Rupert, it was nice to see Prince William amongst, such respected and celebrated individuals at the Pope's funeral. He certainly belonged there. Unfortunately, there was a lot of talk of his wardrobe, especially in comparison to President Donald Trump's wardrobe. First of all, how silly. In my opinion, do you agree it was silly? And what did you think of Prince William's presence at the Pope's funeral?
Well, let's put it into context. Presumably, bearing in mind the King had been to see the Pope at that state visit that he carried out in Italy a couple of weeks back, and he actually had an audience with the Pope. So you might say that's why he didn't go, but it's also probably you've got to think in the context he is still undergoing some form of cancer treatment.
Well,
And
we
as the
also know
Queen
that
is
he went to represent the Queen when the last Pope died. So it was almost like they were just following the protocol for
yeah.
the last passing.
And one of the other things you have to look at, he is actually head of the Church of England stroke Anglican Church. And of course, remember, it was the monarchy who famously, when Henry VIII severed links with the Catholic Church all those centuries ago. And so the king has always, or the reigning monarch has always been head of the Anglican Church. But bearing in mind, the king is trying to write his own rules. He is very much a man of, has a all faiths view and wants to make sure that he can reach out to all faiths. And that would as well assume the Catholicism as well. And bearing in mind, he went to see the Pope and would have seen that as a very significant visit in his working life. But I suppose you'd have to say that the Prince of Wales going is normal. The blue suit, they say, it's as he's not a Catholic, he doesn't need to wear black. And there were other world leaders who didn't, including, I think, the President of India. Donald Trump obviously wore a blue suit as well. So I think it's one of those things where, once again, the internet has taken on something and have run with something which, let's put it into context in the whole thing that was going on at that funeral. It was a celebration of a life extremely well lived, dedicated to his life working for the church and his papacy. And if people have actually going in the end of it and just quibbling over whether someone's wearing a blue or black suit, I think we just need to give a sense of perspective. It was great that the Prince of Wales was there. And bearing in mind, I'll tell you something, Kinsey, we go back to Aston Villa chat. We got absolutely thumped in the FA Cup semi-final. And if he hadn't had to go to the final, to the funeral rather, I'm sure he would have liked to have been at Wembley to watch his team play in the FA Cup semi-final. But the sad thing was, Kinsey, we were walloped.
Yeah, I don't know if he wants witnesses to that defeat. I don't know if he wants anybody to see that his cry face. Not before it's king.
Well, I tell you what, there was a lot of us walking out of that ground with our cry face. But so he managed to avoid going to Wembley for that. I'm sure he was disappointed with his team's result. More importantly, I think it was an important thing for him to be going to because he's put himself on the world stage. He can meet people, future leaders, which he will always probably be involved with. President Trump seems to think he's a good bloke. So all very relevant and probably a great support for his father, as it was a flying visit, 24 hours. And that's something that they're trying to ensure that the king doesn't do, because it might just put him on a little setback. And bearing in mind, he has had this hiccup this month. So I think it's probably a sensible thing. And actually, our prime minister was there, just as your president and his wife was there. I think we can look at it and say it was a really positive experience for the Prince of Wales. And bearing in mind last week, I'll say one other thing. I said about church, I stand corrected, dear viewers, because when we recorded this, we hadn't seen the pictures. But yes, 24 hours later, we know he went to church with his family in Sandringham. And just as I said, I'm glad he did, and really confirming his, a family thing to do at Easter. Go and celebrate Easter with your family. In his case, it was at Sandringham. So I'm sure he was praying for a positive result in the football, but unfortunately, he couldn't get the message through.
Well, our viewers sure told you because they'd seen
Yeah,
some
yeah.
photos, so they were telling on us in the chat
Yeah,
when.
but we did record it a little early,
Yeah,
didn't
we
we?
did.
So
We spent our Easter together
yeah.
on this program, and the pictures hadn't come out yet, and the information hadn't come out yet, and maybe rightfully so. If Prince William wants to spend some private time at church, I think that that's absolutely something that we should respect. Do you think he's going to get some private time on this vacation that's coming up?
Well, I think it was sensible in hindsight that they put those pictures out a little later because it would have been a distraction from the king and the
Um,
most important one going to a church service. So that I think in hindsight, I think they played it correct in the end. So hindsight, well done them in the end. Next week, well, this week, they're off to the Isle of Mull, a place I know well. I've spent quite a lot of my childhood up there because it's near Oban, and we had a house up there, so I was able to go there. It's the most beautiful part of the world, and he's going to the Isle of Mull, and I believe he's got a holiday let. It's a big tour holiday destination, beautiful. And with the weather we've got at the moment, I think he's in for a stunning week on the Isle of Mull. It's one of the most beautiful parts of the country. He's then heading down to Iona. He goes as the Duke and Duchess of Rothesay when he travels to Scotland. So they whip out his Scottish title for the trip. So the Duke and Duchess of Rothesay will be celebrating, I think, their wedding anniversary in on the Isle of Mull, and it chimes with the Princess of Wales wanting and the importance of nature. And I can tell you, dear viewers, Isle of Mull is a stunning place in the Inner Hebrides. We have some fabulous islands up there, which are breathtakingly beautiful, and I can think of no better place to be. When it rains, though, it's pretty miserable.
oh my gosh, what kind of activities can they do there?
Well, it's walking. I mean, it's sort of walking, there's adventure, there's all sorts of things that you could do. It's a great place where people go and sort of explore the island and walking. And because you can walk around and your breath gets taken away when you suddenly stumble across a beautiful loch or, lake for people who don't know. And so it is just a stunning. And Iona has great historic reference too, because Iona, back in the day, I think there were, I'm not fully conversant with the religious significance, but Iona is a significant place in religious, in terms of the religious growth in Great Britain. So
Hmm.
I think it will be a lovely place for them to go. There are some work duties to be carried out, but as a place to go, I hope they have a lovely time when they go to the Isle of Mull. I thoroughly recommend it. And I'm not working for the Scottish Tourist Board, Kinsey, but I just know I had some magical times in my youth when I was up there.
I love to hear that. I also love the idea of um, them staying active, there being things that they can do around the area that they truly are passionate about and that fit, that are on brand. I enjoy hearing that, especially as I know it's so funny because when I watch our chat sometimes, I don't know how they get there, but we always end up talking about royal weddings. Have you noticed that sometimes they'll be like, I remember when they got married.
Uh,
So I love when we come across an anniversary because it truly justifies to me getting to kick back and rewatch William and Catherine's royal wedding. A good anniversary, justifies that. So happy that they have some plans and that the chat will be able to bring up the royal wedding again.
Well, yeah, well, the royal wedding, yeah, all royal weddings are significant. I mean, the first one I remember was Princess Anne in 19 when she was atop her question, she married Mark Phillips, and that was a big hoo-ha. I think in 1973. That's the first one I actually remember. Then I do remember I was actually a serving soldier, not like I was involved in it, but I was based in Germany for William's mother's wedding to the king in 1981, and that was a big thing then. That was a huge deal. So they are landmark occasions. Even, obviously Andrews and Fergie's was a big deal. I mean, all the stops were pulled out for that as well. So they have done they are landmark moments. I will say to anybody, if they want to find out things about Mull, Google Tobermory, because it
Okay.
is the most picturesque village. We used to harbour when you take the ferry from Oban, you go across and it's got painted different colours, and each house is painted different colours. It is
Aw.
a and and then as you take the ferry, there's a castle you approach, which is I think it's part disheveled and run down. And I think, so there's all sorts of history. So as I say, so anyone who wants to find out about the Elder Mole, start by Googling Tobermory.
How gorgeous. I'm going to have to do that. All right. So let's jump to some less pleasant topics. I apologize. But I did just see you discuss this a little bit on Talk. Meghan Markle's Netflix reluctance revealed. Duchess of Sussex says her love of jam making was not something she wanted to share on the streaming giant after the show bombs. Just some of these quotes. During her appearance at Time 100 Summit, Meghan told the audience she had always loved to make things in my kitchen, do small flower arrangements, and make a lot of jam. When she began sending those items as gifts, Netflix suggested there's a show here, claims Markle. Meghan then revealed I hadn't at the onset thought that this was something that I wanted to share in that way. Now, I would argue with you that both Tom Bauer and I believe Andrew Morton discussed Meghan going to the UK and pitching cooking/foodie travel shows. So why is she now saying that this is somebody else's idea? I didn't even want to do this.
Giving herself an opt-out clause.
Yeah,
Do you see
right?
what I mean? She's blame deflecting and saying, well, look, this is the idea of the Netflix people. Funnily enough, haven't we just seen on Instagram her making jam today with Archie or Lilibet? Haven't we on Instagram? I just think I've just seen it somewhere. Um,
I wouldn't
to,
know. I don't follow her. I'm not a masochist.
well, I don't know. It popped up on a newspaper feed that I read, so I took it on the chin,
Okay.
and she's making jam, and you hear the voice of Lilibet with a sort of a twang American. Lily, she refers to him, and then there's Archie with a bit of an American twang as well. But jam making, to me, that's a deflection tactics. She goes to this Time 100 thing, and again, it was a bit like the podcast, incredibly bland.
Mm-hmm.
She talks about word salad about American Riviera orchard. Well, what she spoke at that was word salad again. And she would have wanted to do this cooking program
Yeah.
because that's what she used to do before. I'm sorry. And they arranged to go and put it into someone else's house. And then that line about, I don't want to it's not something I want my children to see. I'm sure they
Well,
wouldn't have been
it was
bothered.
so highly scripted. I don't know if
Hmm.
we've had this conversation, but it was revealed shortly after the Drew Barrymore episode that Megan's team received all of the questions, everything beforehand. It was highly choreographed, even down to Drew Barrymore pulling out the picture of Princess Diana. And Megan slips up a little bit when she's having this chat with the Time 100 host because I know she's the CEO or something, but watching someone pander to Meghan Markle in the way that I witnessed, I refuse to give her any sort of title. But she slips up and says, when my kids come home from their nap, And it's almost like she has tried to memorize her reaction so much, and there's just a slip of the tongue, and some words got mixed up. And everybody's like, where do your children nap if they're coming home from their nap or whatever? She's saying when her kids come home from school, she doesn't want 80 people in the kitchen, which, by the way, if
Hmm.
it took 80 people to make that show, God help them. But did you get the sense that it was all highly scripted and that she probably had seen the questions beforehand?
She wouldn't do anything, and I'm pretty sure, from what I know, is that everything she wants controlled within an inch of its life.
Yes, yes, yes.
When she, okay, and this is an exact example of that. And I'm sorry, it's disingenuous again, and the whole thing just feels fake.
Yeah.
And what I don't know what time. I mean, Time probably quite happy. They've got lots of notoriety about this, but she would have wanted all the questions, and so much of it just felt forced. It didn't look natural, um, and that's where she comes a cropper.
Well, doesn't
Um,
it, isn't it just like blatantly obvious to you that this was all just time looking for their own PR when you see that Blake Lively is actually included in this? Now, Meghan wasn't included. She just invited herself to the party and hijacked the stage. But Blake Lively actually is included in Time 100's most influential people this year. And she's had
oh,
a horrible year to the point where people are saying, I'm at having people asking me, is there any way she can recover? Is her career over? And for Time to include her is such a shameless, desperate way for Time to steal some headlines that it's just blatantly obvious that it's almost a joke that they include Meghan and Blake.
and well,
Where
it's
was Katy
interesting.
Perry?
I've been in space for 10 minutes. Wasn't she? Wasn't she one of the went up and
Yes.
came
Oh,
down
yes.
in
Oh,
up?
yes.
Anyway, I'm out of my depth here. Talking about Blake Lively, and I go back to the football thing. She's actually been seen at Wrexham, where of course they've had this documentary series, and Wrexham won promotion to the championship. Well, she was at Ryan Reynolds' side, and you almost feel that was a bit of a PR, some good PR pictures of her celebrating with a bunch of football fans,
Yeah. Yeah.
in Wrexham. So you can see that what's going on there. The interesting thing about Meghan, suddenly we've got Archie losing teeth. What did we see earlier in the week as part of Louis's pictures? Louis without any teeth. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, that just felt contrived as again. It felt like,
Does she
well,
copy everything? Does she
yeah.
have an original thought in her brain?
So suddenly I've got to get back home. I hope I'm back in time to see Archie's tooth fall out. Well, funnily enough, we'll never know if his tooth has or hasn't fallen out because we'll only see him from the back. Now, I'm not asking to suddenly see pictures of Archie, but if it's his birthday or a landmark occasion and you can control the narrative, what's wrong? That's where, and you see the Prince and Princess of Wales under very controlled circumstances. They've probably taken the photograph, or certainly, I think in Louis's case, there was a photographer in town who did that. But quite often, the Princess of Wales takes and manages those family snaps. I know she got into a bit of bother with one of them. But suddenly you get her talking about, um, and who, I don't know whether I'm not the target market for it, but who wants to know whether Archie's, she's a working mum. There are millions of working mums out there. Why does she think she is so special that she has to do these things? That's my point. I can't understand why she is putting herself as the divine right of working mothers. Well, she's not the divine right of working mothers because she's got an army of people probably doing the washing, probably managing there's nannies to look after the children. She's, close, the children's clothes. She's not scooping them up and putting them in the washing machine. there is an army of people putting that show on the road. So she's not a normal working mother. A normal working mother is one who works 9 to 5 or whatever hours it is, comes home, children are back from school, all hell's breaking loose, and you're trying to keep body and soul together. And husbands are around trying to, they're all, trying to just make sure that there's a degree of normalcy in the family. She lives a life that most of us can, okay, she wants us to aspire to it, but give us some reality about her being a working mum. She's got an army of people behind her, yet she wants to make it seem that she's doing it morning, noon, and night. Well, I am pretty, she's been in New York for 3 days, hasn't she? Well, who's looking after the kids then?
Hmm. Yeah. Does it surprise you that With Love Megan brought in barely a quarter of the viewers that watched the Harry and Meghan docu-series reality show in 2022? Less
Well,
than
We'd
a
love
quarter.
yeah, well, We'd Love with Megan was boring.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the other one was overly interesting, but at least it had a sort of clickbait sort of, you wanted to watch it because you were fascination is the word I'm looking for. And,
Morbid
what,
curiosity.
yeah. And you and I both watched it.
Well,
And
we should stress that we were paid to, but we wouldn't have
yeah,
done
yeah,
it had
yeah,
we not been
yeah.
paid.
We were paid to, and likewise, we'd love Megan.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to talk about it, I've got to have an idea that how significant flower sprinkles are, because
Oh my
once
gosh.
again we
Well, that leads us into our next topic. Meghan Markle loves her. This is a Daily Beast headline, which made me laugh. Meghan Markle loves her flower sprinkles, even if you don't. And Rupert, this is a hill she's willing to die on, and I can't believe it. You were talking about the word salad that you heard her espouse at the Time 100 conference. Well, she it got worse than what we were talking about earlier. Defending her much mocked habit of liberally sprinkling dried flowers on food, saying it is a good way to bring magic to everyday life. She tried to justify her use of the dried food, including on scrambled eggs, Rupert, clarifying she is not a little fairy tossing them around all the time. She said that her habit of sprinkling edible dried flowers on eggs, salads, and yogurt was an analogy for what you could do in your everyday life that can give just a little splash of magic in two unexpected moments. I mean, Rupert, your $15 flower petals aren't that deep. Like, get a life. You're trying to make a buck off of the weirdos that are actually buying into this chaos. Like, I just think that she tries to sound like she's just the smartest person in the room, but it's like, girl, you've got confetti. You're throwing confetti on food.
yeah, well, I maybe you do people do eat nasturtium leaves and flowers. They are edible. So and I've eaten a nasturtium leaf or two.
And
Um,
Megan's not inventing something new, is what you're
no,
saying.
yeah, but they weren't dried. But that's what you often see on sort of fancy cuisine. To get all chefy, you put a bit of as to garnish with a bit of flowers, edible flowers. But these are dried. I can think of nothing worse on scrambled egg. I don't think I've eaten dried fruit and crystallized fruit, but the idea that I sprinkle um, onto um, onto scrambled egg.
Oh my God.
It's awful. Okay, people have. I'm going to sound a bit sort of poncy here. I think probably, I don't know, but chia seeds, putting them on, they're good for you. So
Mhm.
sprinkle that on some yogurt.
Mhm.
Okay, and my wife swears by it. Put some chia seeds. It's good for you. That, and I take a word for it.
I used
So
to put those in my water, and I've been thinking about doing that again.
yeah,
But
well,
you're right; those are good for you. There's
and poppy
perfect for
seeds
you. Yeah.
and poppy seeds. They're sprinkled on food as well. Sesame seeds. These are all normal things, but this obsession with flower sprinkles. Unfortunately, she's digging a great giant hole for her. You know, with this obsession with it and saying try now she's trying by what you've just said and quoting from her. she's now trying to give it a metaphor for life.
Hmm.
That's flower sprinkles are what you should be doing. So it's not just about the flower sprinkles. Go and find something else that helps to elevate your life experience.
Yeah. Why don't you
Well,
just chill out, Megan? So,
yeah,
I I want to read some of my favorite quotes that I found, and I want to stress that I looked outside of our bubble. I looked outside of our tribe because
mm,
obviously we don't want to just
yeah,
I like other people's opinions. So I pursued
yeah.
somebody that was out of this royal commentary world. These comments are all under Ryan Scott's post about Meghan, and Ryan Scott is just kind of a pop culture commentator, and he didn't say anything. What he did was he took Meghan's video, and then he took a really silly SNL skit where Bill Hader and Kristen Wiig are like reacting dramatically in one of their, you know, I think it was a fake soap opera. The skit was like a fake California soap opera, and so uh, I don't know if I should read the Meghan quote again. You guys get it. I'm not going to put you through that, but it was that quote where Meghan says, I started putting them on salads. I started putting them on scrambled eggs. It didn't actually matter. And then she's talking about take flour sprinkles really as an analogy. Oh my God, she actually said it. And think about what you can do in your everyday life that could just give it a little splash of magic to unexpected moments. So here are some of the comments, Rupert. I'm not going to read them all because you could see I pulled a
Yeah.
ton. I find
Yeah.
I find sparks of joy when I pay my rent on time, was one of the comments. Narcissism and tone deaf dressed as care and feminism. These are not royal watchers. These are everyday people. She got the questions way before the interview, and it's transparently, obviously rehearsed. I just can't believe that people get sucked into this absolute BS. Can we please send Meghan Markle and Blake Lively into space on a one-way ticket? The
Well, that's a
world
bit
is
harsh.
the world is quite literally going to, it says poo, but a worse word for poo. And she's
Hmm.
talking about sprinkling flower petals onto scrambled eggs as if it's the key to unlocking eternal fulfillment. Read the room springs to mind. This is embarrassing and so out of touch, says another one. Here, let me find some. She sounds clinically insane, says another person. I think she's taking mushrooms, not flowers, says another. How did Harry end up with this creep? If Ick was a person, I mean, these are people that don't know what she did to Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah.
These are people that didn't watch the Oprah Winfrey interview. These are just people that are reacting to her new commercial pursuits. That is not great.
No, it's not. And she's got these commercial pursuits don't seem to have have not taken off in the eyes of the public. If a program is successful, you get great positive feedback. And sometimes things are panned by the critics, yet the watching public say, Stuff you critics, this program's actually good." I'm not sure we're getting that feedback about the cooking program. I'm not sure we're getting that. And we try and be positive, but you want to look. Of course, there's going to be one or two. As I always say, there will be some people who will like what they're hearing, but it's not cutting through. It's
No.
not a must listen. The As Ever program or the With Love Megan program is not a must watch cooking program. Let's be quite clear, because it's self-indulgent and it's as anodyne and as bland as it possibly could be, because it's all about her. It's not about her guests. And she's struggling, as we're hearing, to get the kind of guests she wanted for her podcast, real heavy hitters.
Which is
Look,
currently being beaten by like a sound machine
hmm,
episode. It's
let's
being beaten by a white noise episode.
Well, a sleep app,
Yeah.
and you think, well, well, having listened to it's sleep inducing, her podcast. So, it's, but
Rupert, be in a room. I want us, like, hypothetically, if we're in a room with Megan and her team, Is she acknowledging the bad feedback, or is she in denial? Like when they sit down and they're going, okay, when let's talk about season 2. It's already in the can. Is there somebody saying, what can we do differently based on this feedback? Or is everyone too scared? And is Meghan acting like she's completely oblivious to the type of very respectful and very legitimate feedback you just gave? It shouldn't all be about you. If you have guests there and they are an expert in some field, allow them to take the floor.
And well, in her case, we do know she doesn't take advice easily. And that was part of the problem when she was in within the royal family, didn't take advice. And I do know that, you know, she even now doesn't want to really take advice because she is convinced by her rightness. And if you're convinced by your rightness, it's very hard for her advisors to say, wake up, Meghan, and smell the roses or smell the flower sprinkles, in her case. Um, and just restart living outside your fantasy bubble that you're a sort of fairy tale princess. But you're not a fairy tale princess. You're a commercial operation now trying to make a buck. Now, is there anything wrong with that? No. But if you're not doing it particularly well, then all businesses have to regroup and look. Now, the Meghan business has to regroup and look and saying, right, what are we doing wrong that could actually make it more of a PR success?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I had no problem with her trying to make money. It's the trying to make money while clinging to her title
Oh,
that gets under my skin, because she's done everything in her power to undermine the British royal family, to tear apart their credibility, but continues to use this title to get herself in the next room.
well, this is the hypocrisy. This is what I think people find deeply frustrating is that she doesn't want to have anything to do with Britain, yet she is entirely dependent on what Britain has given her, which is a
Mm,
title, or the royal
wow.
family have given her a title. And that's the problem. And that's what people are frustrated about. You know, the line about, look, I'm Megan Sussex. No, well, whatever. Yeah, well, that's her name. But it was like a sort of, you got it wrong, girlfriend. So, so, that's where people, I think, just think, and all the sort of slight fake, sort of heraldic sort of look to everything. It's all, you know, cashing in on things in this country which she couldn't wait to escape from because she felt suffocated and stifled and wasn't able to be the real me, as she keeps occasionally alluding to in these interviews, that this is where she's finally free, able to do what she wants. Well, in most people's eyes, what she's doing is not particularly good. If she wants to do it, well, that's fine. But actually, the people around her who are probably being employed, they need to somehow pluck up the courage. But I'm not sure that's an easy thing to do because they'll probably be finding that their courage is accompanied by a P45.
Okay, well, we're gonna get into more of what you just talked about in 1 second, but I have to read more mean comments that made me pee my pants. This one, Rupert
Sorry,
says,
but slightly dramatic.
this one said, I once had a girlfriend like her. One day I said I had a headache and needed to go to CVS for Advil and never came back. This
Okay, you're
this
right.
one's
Good.
this one says, is this real or AI? I mean, seriously, it was just such a parody that people were like, no,
Yeah.
is this real? And another comment says, I want to be this medicated, which made me laugh so
Yeah.
much.
If those are, of course, I'd be interesting to know, but if that was 90% of the comments on this guy's
Yes,
post,
yes.
then you will know that the sort of, and he presumably, he's not someone I'm aware of, but I presume he has a big reach.
Yeah.
And so when he posts something, and this is the point, it's easy for us to have a pop, right? In many ways. But when the people in America are having a pop at you, have you not lost the audience you're trying to tap into?
Mm.
And is his demographic the kind of reach that this person has? Is he the kind of reaching what she would want to be tapping into, which is the aspirational family who want things better? I don't quite know his enough
Well,
about his target
I
market.
think that that's the problem that some of the commenters said. It's that Meghan doesn't understand her target market. One of the people in the comments said, I don't think Meghan understands that we're having trouble paying our rent or our house note
Mm.
or that we can't buy groceries. I think that Meghan has decided to talk to a group of people that have no interest in her. I just read an article by Kennedy on the Daily Mail where she talks about the mean girls of Montecito that are whispering behind Meghan's back. Meghan is talking to an audience that's not buying into it. Instead of sitting down with some marketing strategists, looking at the key demo that supports her online, that, follows her everywhere she goes, that fights for her, and saying, what specifically can I develop that would entice them? What specifically can I create that
Mm.
engages this group of people? Because I don't think it's flower sprinkles.
It's not. And that's where all good businesses understand their market, whatever you're trying to do. Even if you're opening up a sort of posh cafe in some town, you've got to know, have I got the footfall? Is it me setting up something because it's a fantasy? I want to have a posh cafe. But if you know, have you got the demographic that will actually come in there and buy a posh croissant or a cruffin or something. Anyway, whatever, you know what I mean. Um, so any business has to understand who they're reaching out to, and that would apply to her. So who's she trying to believe her lifestyle, and who are going to be actually wanting to buy what she's making? And I'm not sure who middle America is that the market? Probably not. I don't know.
Well, I also saw my girlfriend posted she got her jam from King Charles, like Highgrove, and she was like, "Do you know how
yeah.
much this was? I think it was $7, Rupert. It was $7. It was a big can too, compared to Megan's 28, 12 to $28."
Oh, well, it's all right. She's sending it to. I think she sent some to Alex Beresford, who was this guy who was on the
Oh,
with Piers Morgan when he walked out, and she sent he received some of her jam. Presumably, as it was sent here, some tariffs had to be paid on it. But anyway, that's another story. But anyway, but here we got. So she was sending that as a sort of cheap joke for to sort of have a pop at Piers Morgan. But when you look at the whole thing, I'm not sure she knows what she's trying to tap into. And so when we come to the original point, Netflix have come to me with the idea. Well, I thought she was the great ideas person.
well, remember,
And so,
Archetypes wasn't her idea too. We found out that Archetypes wasn't. That was somebody at Spotify's idea. Like, what
well,
do you
they,
do? You have an original thought, or are you just plagiarizing Pearl Power?
well, and this is the point. She wants to pretend that she's the great female innovator, uh, female business figure. Yet it seems like everybody else is coming to them with the idea. And so, again, we've got slightly grey area. What actually is going on?
Mm,
Is she this great leader from the front? Yes, she wants to be, but when things start to slightly unravel, she's the first to have a go at somebody or make a statement that just leaves her with you know, a defense position. Say, look, I told you,
mm,
not completely my idea.
mm.
So I've been poorly advised.
Yeah.
That you see, that's where I would see some of this is going on because actually she knows, and actually watching that Time interview, even the way she was talking just felt sort of staged, managed. It didn't feel natural conversation. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. When something like that, when you go and see somebody talk, you want to hear conversation. It doesn't want to be scripted. It should be, right, what are we going to talk about? Do you mind any areas you don't want to go about? Okay, that's fine. I'm here to do this. Right, ask me anything. Because if you're confident in what you're about, you should be able to answer every question because you're in control of your brief. If you're
Hmm.
going to put yourself out there, And just to have it's like these chat shows now, don't they? Where everyone in America, presumably, what are we talking about? Here are the questions. And so that person can come up with some funny lines or something. And you think
Yeah.
back in the day, in the old Johnny Carson shows and some of those shows, people would come on, they weren't necessarily plugging anything. And
Right.
wasn't that, it's the same in this
It
country.
was
You know,
friendships. Yeah.
yeah. And they would be a regular guest on the program, come along, right, he was good value, but he or she wasn't necessarily plugging something, now it's just. And I hope one day there might be a reaction against that because it's boring,
Well, I
you
think
know.
that's why you're seeing the rise in digital and the fall in linear television or whatever they call it, just TV,
Yeah.
because in on digital, I mean, there was at one point you and I had more views than Meghan Markle's new show did, or some specifically specific episodes of her show that aired on Netflix. So, and that's because of an organic conversation, unfiltered,
Mm.
where we're just having a chat. You and
Yeah.
I never put a timeline unless sometimes there's
Yeah.
a hard out, but very rarely. And we're just two friends talking.
Yeah.
But you're so right. I hate when they try to make it look organic on like a late night talk show and they're like, so,
Mm.
wait, you got lost in New York one time? And he was like, and they're like, yeah, I got lost in New York. And suddenly they start flashing the pictures of them lost in New York. And you're like, oh, how organic is this conversation that
Yeah.
we conveniently have the Instagram ready to go with all the
Yeah.
pictures of them their lost in New York adventures.
Well, no, and they want to try and make them seem like a normal couple, but they're not. And he wants so much, they want all that security. So
Yeah.
they're not a normal couple. They're never going to get lost. If he's worried about security, the last thing they need to be is lost,
Well,
because and well, look, sort of slightly going on to off back to Prince William and talk about security, not getting lost. There is Prince William walking down the street in London with two security guards you can see, and then up pops this lovely lady, leaps on him, and she's just ecstatic. You could see the security guards just, eyeing up what's going on. But once they realised, and then it was the most natural interaction, and that's what Harry used to be good at
yeah.
back in the day.
I
But
love that.
now,
I've never related to
yeah,
a woman more in my life. I was
well,
like, I
and
want to be that woman leaping through the bush, leaping through all of the
well,
greenery and the
and just
shrubbery to throw
and then
my
getting a
arms around
selfie
him.
and saying, "I'm with the future King of England." It was magical, but that was spontaneous. That was fun. A really good, you know, William and his PR team aren't going to knock that and say, "Well, that was lovely bit of PR because he was doing something he liked." Whereas you look at Meghan going to New York, and yes, they've had that occasion where they were promoting, awareness for people being affected on the internet. I will applaud that as a very good thing in terms.
Tone deaf initiative when they have some
Yeah,
of the most hateful
yeah,
bullies that represent them on the
yeah.
internet.
And also, you're saying about children on internet. Well, as I said earlier, this Instagram, their children are being used in that. Now, they are not necessarily
Thank you.
on it, but they are exploiting to some extent
Yes.
their children in that. But then I've got to balance this. I've also said Prince William and the Princess of Wales do put pictures of their children out, but it's rare. It's around an occasion. But we now seem to be being drip fed
But
endless
it's
bits.
not because Catherine wants you to buy tickets to the ballet
Yeah,
on Sunday.
no,
It's like happy birthday, Prince Louis. Happy birthday, Prince George.
yeah,
Here's us all celebrating the king at Trooping the Color. It's never
yeah,
like mommy's making jam with her kids because she wants you to buy that jam at
yeah.
asever.com.
Well, that's the point. She's seen, I don't know, tipping some strawberries or raspberries into it as if she is jam making. Well, her jam has been made in a factory down the road. She's maybe making the odd jar that she's got in her larder. Do you call it a larder over in America? The room where you store things.
Oh
We
yeah.
call it a larder. We
Call
call
it
it a larder.
a
A
closet.
larder. Well, no, a closet's for clothes, isn't
Um,
it?
a cabinet. The
Yeah,
cabinet.
well, it's sort of like a little room where you can store things, and you can have I've got all my wife's pickles in there because she loves to make as an American loves a bit
I
of dill
love
pickle.
pickles. I do love a pickle.
Uh, so but we're not offering. She's not offering to offer them to sale, I can assure you.
No.
I planted enough cucumbers, hopefully, that she will have plenty to make come the autumn. But that's another story. We are digressing here away, but actually the point being is that Meghan is using those children. We know because she's been seen in the kitchen, and then we've got Lily saying something. Oh, it looks great, Mum. Which is probably a normal thing any daughter would say to the mum. But actually, when you're seeing the children, even in behind the scenes, the cynic in me says there's a very big ulterior motive. And
Yeah, and I
I'm
don't need
sorry
to
if
see the
I maybe
kids.
I,
I don't need to
you
see
know,
them. I don't want to see them. I have no
no,
interest in them. And it bothers me that they went from claiming that the reason they left the UK was because there were going to be paparazzi waiting for them every
yeah,
day at the school drop off and pickup, and that they refused to put their children through that, which was a lie. I've never seen a
mm,
paparazzi shot. Even when Catherine was sick, and I knew she was dropping her kids off and picking them up when everybody was like, hashtag where's Kate? There
yeah.
weren't paparazzi waiting at the school capturing her picking up and dropping off her children, because that is not true, Meghan. That is a lie. It's one of
Mm.
those many lies that they came over and said in the United States, seeking sympathy and knowing that no one was really going to do their due diligence and fact checking them. So no, I don't want to see your children. You've kept
Mm.
them shielded from us. You told us that you're trying to protect their privacy, that Prince Harry specifically didn't want them to grow up the way he grew up. I accept that. I've accepted that, and I have no desire to see or hear about your children. So it
Well,
frustrates me so much that she's shoving them down our throats to sell processed foods. I mean, she went on the Drew Barrymore show and said she brought cookies for everyone that Archie and Lily helped make. Again, like trying to push the narrative that these products are being made in her home by her and her kids so that idiots will go online and press purchase, and they're being made in a random ass factory.
yeah, well, and this is where I think people get driven to distraction by her her tone deafness. You if you're going to use your children, and yet at the one hand you're saying, children on the internet and being exploited, which is horrible, and no one is going to. Um, what they're doing there seems a very laudable thing to be involved in. But again, you feel the stories about them. It should. And yes, we were hearing from one or two of the parents who've lost children, are subject to all the stuff, and we know it's a brutal land out there, and children need to be
Protected.
protected, and as much needs to be done as possible. But you've got to be careful if you're putting children and your children to the forefront, even if it is a sort of voice off, with a sort of American twang. We might not, with a slight American twang. So I'm frustrated. And this week in New York, I don't think has done her any favors at all.
I don't think so either. Again, it made Meghan a meme. And
Uh,
anytime that she comes out against online bullying, you're like, well, here are 20 examples of people that have your picture as their profile picture and then the title Sussex in their name, attacking random people, doxing random people, and trying to make their life a living hell. So why don't you clean up your front porch first?
yeah,
Really quickly, let's wrap up with some of Tina Brown's comments, because she talked to the Telegraph, the Daily Telegraph, because she's got an event over in the UK. And she had some things to say about Harry and Meghan. First of all, she did talk about how incredible, and I don't think we acknowledge this enough, the transition was from Queen Elizabeth to King Charles, and how just effortless that was, and how a lot of people were pleasantly surprised by that transition. And I do think that's an incredible point, and I really appreciated that she made that. She said a lot of positive things about the current British royal family. Now, she did accuse Prince Harry and Meghan Markle of allowing their appetite for money to lead them into making disastrous decisions. She said the irony is that Harry really misses being a prince. I'd love your opinion on that. But now looks like a disaster tourist when he arrives at the scene of events like the LA wildfires. She suggested he will never return to the royal family, saying there is still a Harry shaped hole in the royal family, but I don't think that hole's going to close. It's a pity because that's all they lack, that bit of sizzle coming out. The side sizzle Margaret provided for the Queen is
Mm.
actually very good for a royal family because it would take the pressure off William and Catherine to have to be perfect, which is very boring for them. What's unfortunate is that Harry is the most talented in the family at human
Uh,
relations, like his mother. However, she does insist that the House of Windsor is on a pretty steady footing right now. So, my question for you is in three parts. Do you think Prince Harry misses being a prince? Do you think there is a Harry-shaped hole in the royal family? And you just said it yourself. Prince William has shown a lot of empathy, compassion, and personality in the last few years. I think he shines like his mother did too.
absolutely, but they are. He did, and Tina Brown was right when he was in the royal family before Meghan came along. He did provide sizzle. Sometimes it's like controversial sizzle,
Naked
but
Vegas.
yeah, yeah. Well, unfortunately, that didn't stay in Vegas. But you'd have to say he did bring quite a lot to the party, and that's why I think people are. We do miss that. Does he miss it? The problem is, it was his job. He's struggling to find a job now. It was easy. I'm a prince. I may be the number two, but I've got a purpose. I can get out, I can go and do some stuff and help with my title, the royal family do what the royal family is about. And unfortunately, um, I think he probably does miss it because he's now struggling to find anything to do. He hasn't got his friends. I think he's lonely.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think he is missing being in the royal family. Um, and so I think she has some extent hit the nail on the head, and he is floundering. And you even saw it last week in New York. He looked like the spare. He talked about being a spare. Well, right now, with his wife, doing whether we agree it's good or bad, she's out there promoting her stuff, and he's just towing along. Didn't he turn up for 20 minutes at the Aviation Awards, and then I think Kurt Russell made some joke about raspberry jam or something. Anyway, it's out there that he's got to go back to making raspberry jam or something for his wife. But he was there. So you look at it all and you think, what's he actually doing out there? He may be saying, I'm happy, and Meghan's saying, I've never been happier. I'm
Well,
not
first of all,
sure.
you and I both know that anybody that has to tell people that they've never been
Oh, oh,
happier are not the happiest people in the world. They they just glow. You just know, and it's not
yeah.
excessive amounts of bronzer. You just know. They don't have to tell an audience full of
Oh,
strangers, I'm the happiest I've ever been. But one thing that really gets under my skin about this, and we've already acknowledged that
yes.
Time just wanted the PR, but Meghan, her brand is months old. What other random person do you know who's accomplished nothing but marriage gets to sit on Time's stage and talk absolute gutter nonsense? That just there's no proof that this brand is a success at all whatsoever. She just launched like back to back like a tornado,
Yeah.
all of these different projects, but who else in their right mind, like how lucky is does this woman ever acknowledge how truly lucky she
Well,
is?
there. Well, no, she won't. She won't ever. I don't think. She won't admit any failings because she wants to seem that I'm brilliant. For Harry, I think it's a tough one for him. Yes, it seemed the grass was greener on the other side and out of it, and it seemed in theory that, I mean, he would have ideally liked the half in, half out. So he could say 6 months a year, I commit to the royal family, and the other six, well, I'm over. But the Queen soon put a stop to that idea, uh, and that's caused him the problem. And it's really relevant now because you've got Spares finished, the book's finished, all the sort of, he's being able to story tell. What's he going to do now? He can't continue to be having a pop. Yes, it's sad he's not seeing his father. Yes, it's sad he's not with his brother. No one wants that. But what we've got now is someone who is in such a state of limbo, he looks a bit lost. And he looked lost last week in New York. And that is ultimately the problem for him. How does he, and everyone wants to have a sense of purpose, for your mental health, everything. And he talks about your mental health, having something to do, getting out there, being positive, being proactive. At the moment, has he got enough that is making him feel proactive and giving him a sense of purpose? When he was in the royal family, yes, his life was organized, but he had a sense of purpose. It may have been, yes, I've got to go here, and your diary is pretty chocker. But that's the problem. And I think the reality now is, the grass is greener. And in terms of Meghan's case, everything she says, methinks she does protest too much.
Yeah, I don't know if I had this conversation with you, but I talked to somebody recently that told me that Prince Harry has reached out to charities since leaving the royal family that have been like, "Oh, great, thanks," but they haven't found a place for him because they don't see his value. After attacking the British royal family, he
Oh,
doesn't represent the royal family to them anymore, and they don't see the value of having taking him on in any capacity, similar to what we're hearing with Senebale, where they're like,
well,
actually, there are more questions and critical questions of your association than benefits at this point in time.
yeah, and the centre Bali, one of the accusations from Dr. Sophie Shanduka is very clearly the brand is tarnished. We aren't able, with him as as running the charity, does not have the pulling power that it would have had if he was still within the royal family. And that's a serious case. And so other charities will be thinking exactly the same. What can he bring? He's not in this country anymore. Yes, he works with Well Child, and I know that's a long-standing patronage, and they value his involvement when he comes over. But even when he comes over, of course, it's clouded in security hoo-ha and all that. He can't just come here and just say, "Right, I'm coming here," but there's always a backstory to it. And I feel for Well Child, which is a very laudable charity and helping, well, it says does what it says on the tin. It's there to help children in very difficult circumstances and does a great deal of very good work. But again, he was they value and really valued him when he started his involvement in it. And I know that for a fact. And you think, goodness me, you're missing out. But what can he bring now, stuck in America? Do American charities want a British member of the royal family as their patron? Probably not. You,
I think there was glamour attached, but unfortunately, he lit that on fire in accusing members of his family of racism, and just
yeah.
severing those ties. And you talk about Well Child, and you talk about how it's even hard to accept, or it's even hard to see the good in him coming over because it's crowded by the headlines associated with his charity. But it's also like one of the headlines that we're going to see for the rest of the king's life is Prince Harry didn't see his father. Prince Harry didn't see
Mm.
his father. And if Harry and Meghan feel, and they should, haunted by the public's response to them today because of the way they treated Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth towards the last years of their lives, just wait until we lose you know who.
Yeah.
They're going to be angry. They're going to be angry that Harry and Meghan treated the king the way that they did towards the end of his life. And they're not going to be able to shake off this reputation.
Well, at the moment, you're hearing that, they're still worried that every time, the royal family, that is, or worried that any time they open the communication lines, that it'll suddenly appear in a book.
And People Magazine,
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
People Magazine, every time Prince Harry has something to do with People Magazine, a source tells People Magazine that the king's not taking his calls. I mean,
yeah,
how can you trust that person? I know you've been so generous with your time. Let me ask you two more questions and then I'll let you
yeah.
go because you're very international. You're a jet setter and you've got places to be.
Yeah,
Tina,
well, hopefully it's Shanghai, but
yeah,
I'm off. I got some show jumping to go and cover in Shanghai,
I
so
love that.
that's yeah.
I love that.
So
Now
it'll
I
be
know
two.
why. I was like,
Yeah, well,
Shanghai. No,
yeah,
no,
well, it's show jumping, yeah, which is another part of my working life, away
uh,
from royals. But there was a sort of, anyway. So I'm
yeah,
off to
they go
Shanghai.
hand in hand sometimes when you got
Yeah,
Princess
yeah,
Anne's star in the house. All right,
Yeah.
so Tina Brown mentions royalty versus celebrity. That I don't think we acknowledge this enough, but you have brought this up here on this podcast. It's such a decline in relevance, celebrity versus royalty. She said he and Meghan talk about doing good, but what good are they doing? We talk about this constantly.
Yeah.
The good you can, and I feel like the Harry and Meghan are getting the point, and that's why there's also the event in New York while Meghan was
Mm,
having a totally tone deaf conversation on a stage with Time 100. Yeah, they could say, well, the real purpose of this trip was to do this,
mm,
to unveil this display. But she says the good you can do as a royal is so much more potent. When Diana shook the hands of the AIDS patient without gloves, when royals always wore gloves before, how much more potent was it that she was a princess than if she'd simply been a celebrity? And that's where we find Prince Harry at
mm.
today. You're just a celebrity now. It's not as potent. And the charities, I think, sense that.
Look, you're in celebrity land, aren't you? Hollywood. That in your celebrity is very important. But unfortunately, it doesn't take like the A-listers are few and far between, but there are a myriad of Z-listers, claiming to have some form of celebrity.
Mhm.
And royalty does come, you are a celebrity as a member of royal family by birth, and it is your fate that you're born into this family that happens to be the British royal family. Could be well any other royal family. They've been dealt a hand. For Harry, he's decided to leave that, and so he loses his big cachet, his big selling point. He's now just another duke out on the road,
Yeah.
and that's it. I don't
I
say we
don't know
have.
if he can, but I think that he is recognizing it, but there is an element of denial because they do insist that we still refer to them as titles. With their titles, they give their children, American children,
Hmm.
titles. So there is an element of absolute delulu there. Brown said that Meghan looks ridiculous in the wake of her cereal brand launches. Every week she announces a new project. Stop announcing projects, says Tina Brown. She's almost compulsive about announcing things, and they don't really happen. That's the truth. There have been so many things that haven't come to fruition. They fade, and she looks ridiculous. I feel sorry for her because she's so lost, similar to what you just said about Prince Harry. I think Harry's a talent that's worth more than that. I hope he gets a life back. Any response to that quote?
Well, we all would wish his life back, but he's not going to have it back until there's some serious humble pie, presumably, hopefully not with flower sprinkles on it, from his side of the family. He has to offer the hand of, and say, look, this hasn't quite, I'm sorry. We have to find a way of putting this to bed. But at the moment, I don't think the royal family have any inclination. They've got their own issues to try and resolve. And they say, right, Harry, you're a big boy now. You're a man in your 40s. There's only so much we can do. Now get on, live your life, be happy. You say you want to be happy, so show us. Be happy. And then, maybe 4 or 5 years down the line, if you're really knuckling down and look content, Meghan looks content, you're bringing up your children, you've got the family you want, then enjoy it, but don't look as if you're still bearing a grudge against humanity. Look, of course he's had a trouble. There have been some really nasty things in his life, and we wouldn't wish, losing his mother at his age and the sort of spotlight he was on, it would have been uncomfortable for anybody, and even more so. And that's why he's always struggled to get over that. But if that now you're 40 and you've chosen this life to be in Montecito, to have the American way, the American dream, he has that opportunity, then just go out and look as if you're having the time of your life because you probably can afford to have the time of your life.
Yeah. And unfortunately, he's still giving interviews where he's lashing out at his father and his family and hinting at things still going on
Yeah.
behind the scenes. So The clock, we restarted the clock last month. When you said the 4 or 5 years of looking happy, Prince Harry reset that clock. So now we've got a little, probably quite a bit of time in front of us before they start the process of healing again. All right, agree with us, disagree with us, let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Rupert, safe travels. We'll miss you, and we hope that you have fun and take lots of good pictures.
Well, I will take some pictures and look forward to. I think I may be due to chat to you in a couple of weeks' time, and give you tales of daring do in Shanghai. But anyway, I'm looking forward to it. Never been, so happy days. And you look after yourself, Kinsey. Anyway, we'll catch up in a couple of weeks' time.
Thank you. Bye.